Hey there, Scary Parish. It's Tuesday, March 8, 2022. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Cal Boone is here with me. Strong jaw. And as previously noted, we're doing short episodes on the top 6 conference tournaments. It's the ACC tournament, Big 10, Big 12, Big East, Pac-12, and the SEC. This episode is on the Big 12 tournament. Starts Wednesday in Kansas City. Kansas and Baylor are co-Big 12 champs and thus the top 2 seeds. Kansas is the 1 seed. Baylor is the 2 seed. That means the Jayhawks and Bears won't play until Thursday's quarterfinals. Strong jaw, this seems easy to me. If Kansas or Baylor wins this Big 12 tournament, that team will be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Is that simple?
I think it's that simple. And I would go a step further and say that I think if they meet in the Big 12 title game, as the bracket would at least project, if the bracket falls chalk, I think both could end up on the 1 line. It's kind of interesting because both teams are entering the postseason kind of going different directions. KU's vying for the 1 seed. They've lost 2 of their final 4 games entering the Big 12 tournament. One of those came in an overtime win against Texas at home. So they've been playing kind of with fire a little bit. Meanwhile, Baylor, they're missing LJ Cryer. They're missing Jonathan Chachua. But they've won their final 5. They've looked pretty good. They beat KU during that stretch. So I think that's kind of the biggest storyline entering the Big 12 tournament is both of these teams, I think, vying for the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Jerry Palm right now has Baylor projected as a 1 seed and Kansas projected as a 2 seed. But the truth is, there's not much difference between their resumes. Like, let me run you through it real quick. Baylor is 11-4 in quadrant 1, 7-1 in quadrant 2. So 26-5 overall, 18-5 in the first 2 quadrants, only 1 loss outside of quadrant 1. That's excellent. Kansas, 10-5 in quadrant 1, 7-1 in quadrant 2. So 25-6 overall. 17-6 in the first 2 quadrants with only 1 loss outside of quadrant 1. I mean, they're really just the only difference between them is like 1 game. You take one of these losses and flip it into a quadrant 1 win for Kansas, and they've got more or less identical resumes. So if either team wins the Big 12 tournament, that team's guaranteed to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. There's just no scenario where you can be a regular season champ of the best league in the country, a tournament champ of the best league in the country, and not be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So there's no question in my mind, whether it's Kansas or Baylor, if one of them wins this, they're a 1 seed. The question, I think, is, and you touched on this already, can Baylor still get a 1 seed or Kansas still get a 1 seed without winning the Big 12 tournament? I think Baylor is more likely than Kansas, just based on the way Jerry has them right now. But it would be not impossible, but I think unlikely for Kansas to be a 2 seed heading into the Big 12 tournament, not win it, and move up to the 1 line. I think they probably, in that case, stay a 2 seed.
Yeah, I think that's the big story is figuring out what Kansas is going to do and if they can make the run. Kansas should be the favorite entering the Big 12 tournament. I think there's kind of no question. If you've been to the Big 12 tournament before, that's kind of like a home game for Kansas. And the bracket looks pretty good for them, especially. I think they've got a real chance to obviously make it, and they're lined up as the 1 seed. Baylor, I think, is a different story. I feel like Baylor has been walking wounded, and at some point the shoe's going to drop, but the shoe hasn't dropped. Baylor just kind of keeps on rolling. I don't know. Like we'll see. I'm curious what these teams look like because again, Baylor has looked really good to close the regular season. Kansas kind of struggled to end the regular season. Now they kind of wiped the slate clean, obviously in the Big 12 tournament. And I think that if they make the Big 12 tournament title game, it gets interesting because I think there's a chance that both Kansas and Baylor end up on the 1 line on Selection Sunday. We'll see kind of how it shakes out across the country, especially with Arizona. They're going to be right there. Kansas could end up being like that top number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, but it's going to be really close, I think.
You mentioned what Baylor has done in spite of injuries. It's why, and I know it's debatable between Bill Self, I guess even Mark Adams and Scott Drew, for Big 12 Coach of the Year. But I was on radio in Kansas City earlier today with Sarin Petro, and we were sort of talking about it, and I said, listen, I think you could basically vote Bill Self Coach of the Year every year. He's incredible. He's now got 20 conference championships in his career. Mike Krzyzewski is retiring at the age of 75 as the GOAT with 13. Bill Self's already got 20. I mean, it's outrageous. But in this particular year, I think Scott Drew's the Coach of the Year. He lost 4 starters off his national championship team. All right, so about to be a 1 seed for what would be the 3rd consecutive year if we had a tournament in 2020. All right, that's incredible. He lost 4 starters off his national championship team. How do you replace all that? He did it. Stay great. And then he lost 2 rotation players, including at the time his leading scorer in LJ Cryer. Like, LJ Cryer hasn't played. He's played 1 game since January 25th. And I guess it was maybe 2 Mondays ago, Fran Fraschilla was doing a Kansas game on Big Monday and said he didn't think LJ Cryer was playing again this season. And I don't think Franny would just say that all willy-nilly. Like, I think he was at shoot around like you are when you're a color analyst in advance of a game. And, those are very casual, candid conversations. And I bet he left those with the impression that LJ Cryer is probably not going to play. Baylor has not gone that far. Scott Drew actually said he prays for LJ Cryer's health every single night. But when Franny said that, it raised my eyebrows a little bit. Like, okay, they keep saying he's a game time decision, but if Franny didn't think he was going to play again this season, it was a discouraging thing to hear. So they lose LJ Cryer, they lose Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua, who played more than 20 minutes a game for the title team, was playing more than 20 minutes a game for this team. Very important player to what they do, and they still just keep winning. Like, when you lose 4 starters from your championship team, bring back a new team, lose 2 rotation players from that, and you still are co-Big 12 champions and in position to be a 1 seed, I think that's Coach of the Year stuff. So the Big 12, as of this moment, it projects as a 6-bid league, according to Jerry Palm. Baylor as a 1 seed, Kansas as a 2 seed, Texas Tech as a 4, Texas as a 6, Iowa State as a 7. Boy, Iowa State better be glad it got all that work done early, because it has not been great down the stretch. TCU as an 8. Those are all locks. Those teams are in. No matter what happens this week, those teams are all going to the NCAA tournament. Oklahoma is the bubble team. That's your home state. Yep. Oklahoma is 3-11 in quadrant 1, 6-2 in quadrant 2. So 9-13 in the first 2 quadrants. They've also got a quadrant 3 loss. They're top 40 in KenPom and some of the other computers. They're 42nd in the net. Do you have a sense for how much Oklahoma has to get accomplished in the Big 12 tournament to be a legitimate at-large candidate? Is it even possible? I mean, obviously they'd have to upset Baylor in the quarters. You can't be way on the wrong side of the bubble, lose in the quarterfinals of your conference tournament and get there. So they obviously got to beat Baylor. Then they would play either Texas Tech or Iowa State in the semis. Got to win that. And then you're in the championship game. And honestly, I don't even know that if you lose there, I don't know that that's good enough. You would have added 2 quadrant 1 wins and probably taken another one, another loss. I think they probably got to win the whole thing. I'm not sure there's a path for an at-large.
Yeah, I agree. They're probably on the bubble of being on the bubble, which
Right.
is not exactly where you want to be. Definitely have to win multiple games at this point. They closed the regular season with 3 consecutive wins, and I think it was kind of a feel-good story. But they were really bad basically all of February. They only won 2 games in the entire month of February, and they really put themselves behind the 8 ball. I think they probably have to run the table to win it all. And oh boy, I mean, good luck. Baylor is first up. They'd probably end up playing Texas Tech in the semis. When they played Texas Tech just a few weeks ago, they scored 42 points and lost by 24 points. So the chances that OU is able to run the table is probably pretty low. But yeah, I think that's probably what they would have to do to get in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, because anything short of winning this thing is going to leave them multiple games under 500 in the first two quadrants with a quadrant 3 loss. So like I said, right now they're 9-13 in the first two quadrants. Let's say they win quarters, win semis, then lose in the championship game. So that'd be 2-1 in a 3-game stretch, all quadrant 1 opportunities. So suddenly they'd be 11-14 in the first two quadrants with 5 quadrant 1 wins and a quadrant 3 loss. 2 games under 500 in the first two quadrants with a quadrant 3 loss. That's close. I think that's probably close, but on the wrong side. My advice to Porter Moser would be, if you happen to get to a title game against all odds, you probably still want to go ahead and win it, or else you might just be a really high seed in the NIT. All right. What do you got for a championship game in the Big 12 tournament? Who you got winning it?
I got to go chalk. I looked at this bracket and tried to talk myself into someone who could make a run as, a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 seed. And I think it's possible, but I think it's Baylor and Kansas that end up meeting in the Big 12 title game. I would take Kansas over Baylor. Again, it's just it's not home court, but it might as well be home court for Kansas. They roll deep in Kansas City. I think the recent inconsistency we've seen from Kansas gives me a little bit of pause, but I think this is the best team in the field. They're way more healthy than Baylor. I think they will get to the Big 12 title game and end up winning it.
I'm with you. I've got, and my semifinals would be Kansas, Texas, and Baylor, Texas Tech. And Texas Tech has showed signs at different times this year that they're capable of beating any of these teams on a neutral court. So if the tournament ends with, the Red Raiders cutting down nets, that won't be crazy. But I'm chalk with you. Kansas, Baylor in the title game. And then I've got Kansas winning it for the exact reasons you pointed out. What's the LJ Cryer situation? Like, at some point, losing one of your best players matters. Losing two of your rotation players matters. Like, for a while with Houston, they lost 2 of their top 4 before Christmas. And for a while, it didn't look like it mattered. Well, now it looks like it matters. Yeah. They've got smacked by Memphis twice. That's a team that's going to be, a 6 seed, 5 seed, 6 seed, 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, but very vulnerable. Not because they wouldn't have been really good, not because Kelvin Sampson isn't amazing, but because when you lose 2 of your top 4, that shows up. I've talked about this on other episodes. Like, if you took 2 of the top 4 off of Kentucky, what would that look like? 2 of the top 4 off of Duke, what would that look like? 2 of the top 4 off of Arizona, what would that look like? Like, college basketball teams aren't built to just lose 2 of their top 4. And for Baylor, it's not 2 of the top 4 like it was for Houston, but it's 2 of the top 6, 2 of the top 7. It's 2 players that matter. And I think that, combined with the fact that Kansas fans are going to overrun that arena and create what feels like a home court advantage, it makes me, with all due respect to the Drew family, lean a little toward the Jayhawks in this situation.
Yeah, and Tamo Chachua, like, production-wise, you look at the stat sheet. He's not, one of the top 4 guys on the team, but he's kind of like the glue guy. He was the guy that kind of held them together defensively. Like, he was kind of the heart and soul of that team. So, I mean, in a way, like, I think he's easily one of the top 5 most important Baylor players. So you're missing that guy. You're missing LJ Cryer. Eventually, I agree with you. It's probably going to end up catching up with Baylor at some point. With all due respect to the Baylor, to the Drew family,
obviously, including the dog Huck. So Big 12 tournament starts on Wednesday. You get Kansas State against West Virginia. Remember, this is only a 9-team tournament because Oklahoma State, your Cowboys, are not allowed to participate.
Big 12 with 10 teams playing with 9 teams in the postseason tournament. How about that?
Gets confusing. Got Kansas State and West Virginia on Wednesday, quarterfinals on Thursday, semifinals on Friday, and a championship game on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Levi Norwood. Scored 1 point in one game in the 2010-2011 season for the Baylor Bears. Shouts to Larnell. Thank you guys once again for listening to the Ion College Basketball Podcast in the middle of the dumbest pandemic of my lifetime. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. 5 stars at both places. Write a nice review, like nice words. Hey, I went and checked last night just to see if you guys are doing it. You're doing it. I appreciate it. If you haven't left a review at Apple Podcasts yet, please go do that. There's more of us than there are of them. There's more of us than there are of them. Had one review at Apple Podcasts. He actually said, GP, I'm here, leaving a 5-star review, even though I am one of them. So them exist, but there's more of us than there are of them. Smash that like button if you haven't done it already. Please subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't done that. And we will talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.